Shalom Aleichem and welcome everyone as we are preparing for Shabbat. Shabbat Parashat Vayishlach. In this week's Parsha, we're starting off with a very scary scenario. We have Esav. Yaakov is told Esav, his brother, his arch enemy, his nemesis, who wants to destroy him, is coming with 400 men. Strong men, generals, who are set with one goal. The goal to destroy Yaakov and his family and everything that is with him. And then, as the scene unfolds, all of a sudden, Esav starts to hug Yaakov. They come on friendly terms. Esav so much says, I'm here, I'm ready to escort you. Of course, Yaakov says, I don't need your escort. You're good, go ahead. I'm slow, I'll catch up later. We're still catching up. But how did it happen? How did it happen that Esav, who's coming with 400 generals, coming to destroy Yaakov, all of a sudden, he hugs Yaakov, they become friendly. How does it happen? In the V'higadito of Yaakov Galinsky, Tzechadik Lebracha, he writes that after the war, he met up with a friend of his who learned in the same yeshiva, Rav Gershon Liebman. And Rav Gershon Liebman, when he met him in Bergen-Belsen in the DP camp, right, the displacement camps, he said, I'm building a yeshiva here, I'm starting a yeshiva. And he says to Rav Yaakov Galinsky, I want you to go to the other displacement camps, the other DP camps, where the survivors are, and I want you to help build the yeshiva there, for those people that are there. So Yaakov tells him, what about money? Where are we going to fund this all? He says, all the money you need I have. He says, how? He says, all the governments that are now taking care of the camp, they're ready to give me any money that I need to build the yeshiva. So Yaakov says, I don't understand. They don't like yeshivas. It's not all about yeshivas for them. How are you getting to take their money and use it for yeshivot? So Gershon Liebman says, listen, it's written in the Torah. Esav was coming, 400 generals, and all of a sudden, instead of killing Yaakov, he hugs him, he kisses him. The Torah is telling us that anything is possible. So Yaakov asks him, but how? How did Yaakov do this? How is it possible to get someone who doesn't believe in the yeshiva system to help pay for it? So he says, let me tell you a story. The Rambam, we know, without the Rambam, our Torah would not be the Torah we have today. We'll be incomplete. The Rambam's Mishnah Torah, the Rambam's Sfarim, Yada Chazoko. Without him, we lack a lot. But the Rambam also knew Yesod, the Chachamim tell us, En Kemach in Torah. If you don't have flour, you don't have Torah. Different stories why the Rambam went to learn medicine in the first place. Some say that the governments where he lived at that time required them to be busy either working or university during the day. Anyway, the Rambam went to learn how to be a doctor. He learned medicine. How did he do so? He found the best doctor in town and told him, I want to be your apprentice. I want to learn from you how to be a doctor. So he read every medical book that was there, and he followed this doctor everywhere he went. One day, the doctor was called to an emergency case. A patient lost conscious. And the doctor ran and he thoroughly examined the patient, and he realized that That there was a worm that got up through the nose and went into the brain and is causing all these problems. And the only way to fix this is to remove the worm. So he right away gave some anesthesia, whatever they had that day, and he knocked out the patient. And he started to drill into his skull. And then he took these big forceps and he's like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull out the worm and I have to move around to get it. So the Rambam says to him, but wouldn't you be causing so much damage when you're going around with a metal instrument inside the brain? So the doctor says, you're right, but what other choice we have? If we don't get out the worm will eat through his entire brain. At least like this, we'll save some of the brain. The Rambam says, there has to be another way. Give me an hour, and I'll figure out a way to remove this worm without any damage at all. We don't have to insert this metal thing in there. So he came back an hour later, right? They gave him exactly an hour. He comes back an hour later, and he came back with some herbs. And he put the herbs near the hole where they cut into the skull already. And he put it next to the patient, and all of a sudden the worm started to come out, and they see it crawling out through the hole, and it goes on top of that herb, and he proceeded to eat it. The worm started to eat that leaf. And the Rambam turns to the doctor and says, now all you have to do is bandage him up. They bandage him up, and the doctor says to the Rambam, how did you know? The Rambam says, no, there's a Beferish Chazal. The Gemara tells us, Ketuvot, how to deal with this problem. But Rav Gershon Liebman tells Rav Yaakov Galinsky, he says in life everything is like this. You have to know the aroma, the herb, what works to get the other person to agree with you. He says, when Esav saw the gifts that were coming, he saw all these gifts coming to him. And Yaakov did it smart. He left space in between, right? He made it look bigger than it is. That's how some people know how to make a present, how to tie it up, how to put it in the foil, how to put it in the plastic and give it a bow and everything. It's a small little gift inside, but it's big looking. Yaakov gave the gift. That spoke to Esav. So much so that Esav already calmed down. So much so that Esav started to hug. Rav Gershon Liebman tells him, he says, how am I getting the other governments to pay? How am I getting the other governments to pay? He says, very simple. I tell them that I'm going to provide a structure for the boys and for the girls, and so they won't be running around making problems in the camp. I'll have a place for them to stay. I'll have what to do for them. Keep them busy. He says, which government doesn't want that? Which one wants the boys on the street making craziness? They rather keep them in a good structure. That's how I'm getting there. So Rav Yaakov Galinsky says that this helped him a lot. He says, you think about it, you deal with a lot of different people, and you want to convince them to do something. How do you convince them? Rav Yaakov Galinsky says there was once a fisherman, a very clever fisherman. Fisherman said, I like strawberry shortcake, but when I go to catch fish, I don't put strawberry shortcake as bait. I use worms. Why? Because the fish like worms. I like strawberry shortcake, but the fish like worms. If I want to catch fish, I need to give them what they want. Right? Sometimes you have bachrim, you have young boys, and they're trying to teach them Torah, and they're giving them all sorts of things. You're giving them strawberry shortcake, but they want worms. Or you're giving them worms and they want strawberry shortcake. You have to know what they want. You have to know what they want. The Rambam, in Parashat Mishnayot, in Perik Chelik, he writes as follows. And he spends a lot of time writing this. He says, imagine, a small child is brought before the Rebbe. The Rebbe is supposed to teach him Torah, but the child is small. He's not going to understand how great Torah is. What does he have to do? The teacher has to tell him something like this. I'll give you some nuts or figs. Or in today's case, here in the Gadata, he writes bisli or potato chips. Today you already have to up it a little bit. Sushi, donuts, you gotta up it to what they want. But he says you give them some food. You entice them. And this way, he'll work for the candy, with the sushi, but he'll learn the Torah. No, how old is this kid? 5, 6, up till 10, let's say, food works. And the Rambam continues. The Rambam says when he gets older, and he understands a little more, he's not going to want candies anymore. What do you give him then? The Rambam says you give him clothing. Right? The designer labels. They have, I remember when I was growing up, the boys my age would want to, they wear those special belts with the different letters. H for Hilfiger, this guy for that one. You have all these different types of belts. The designer label names. They have custom made with the different stitching. But you talk to the kid. You give him you give him an incentive to work for. And the Rambam writes, eventually he'll come out of this stage too. And what do you do then? Then you have to give him an incentive for money. He doesn't want clothing anymore. He'll buy his own clothing. Now he wants the money. So you give him an incentive for money. Right? And the Rambam says, and this boy continues. Now, how old is this kid now? Money already. He's definitely in his teenage years. And the Rambam writes, as he gets older, he's going to say, money's not that important. Now he's going to want honor. So what do? You tell him, learn Torah will make you a rabbi. Learn Torah will make you dayan. Learn Torah will make you in charge. We'll give you the honor. The Rambam writes, really all this is not right. Because you should learn Torah for Torah's sake, but what should you do? What should you do? This is what a man with limited intelligence. But if you continue teaching him the right way, he'll figure it out. That's what Chachamim said. Even learn Torah, not lishma, not for the right sake, because eventually it'll come, but you have to start somewhere. You have to teach the child the right way. You have to get him back. You have to get him the way that he understands. I remember I had my Rebbe in the 7th grade, Rabbi Feinstein, not related to Moshe Feinstein, but Rabbi Feinstein. I remember that was the first time I heard the word incentive, right? That was the time I learned what the word incentive meant. Incentive. He always gave out incentives. You learn well, we'll give you this. You learn well, we'll give you that. Incentive. That he applied this. In yeshiva, when I was in Mesifta Torah V'dat, throughout the high school, when we learned Gemara, we would finish a parak, and then there would be a bechina gedola, a test on the whole parak. You can do the test both two ways. You can do the test with the Gemara open, not an English translation, or you can do the test by heart. If you do the test by heart, and you got a 90 or above, you got $25 with the certificate. Certificate that you knew the parak by heart. That. From the 9th grade to the 11th grade, because that was the Mesifta years, 9th through 11th, every single bechina gedola, I got 100 plus. One thing once I got 94 or 98, but every time it was 100, and I got $25 for each one. An incentive, $25 to know a parak by heart. It's not too bad. Okay. And for extra credit, you knew some tosefot. You got points, and I made money. Hey, it was nice. A high school boy wants money. He wants designer clothing too, but it's an incentive. That's what a person needs. A person needs an incentive. Today I was listening to a shir by a refined Waxman Shlito. That was a different topic, but there was a story there I think that's related. There was a yeshiva in Europe in the 1960s, 1970s, and there was a young man that was learning there. But during that time, it was the hippie revolution, right? All these hippies that came out, and he got caught up in this revolution. He himself became a hippie. He put on long hair, and he traveled the world preaching peace. Okay, and eventually he made his way to the United States. And he got older and older. He's still a hippie, but he had no job. So he was looking for a job. He opens up the newspaper, and he sees that not too far away from him, here in Far Rockaway, there's Yeshiva Shar Yoshim. And they're looking for a janitor. He says, listen, I don't have a job. I need some money. Well, I'll apply. Story goes, he goes to Shar Yoshim. He makes an appointment to get an interview for the janitor job. And he meets with the Rosh Yeshiva, Harav Shlomo Freifeld. And the Shlomo Freifeld starts talking and says, "No, what'd you come here for?" He says, "I want the janitor job." He says, "And who are you?" So he starts saying, "I'm actually Jewish." He says, "Really?" He says, "Did you ever go to yeshiva?" He says, "Yeah." And he says, "Which yeshiva?" He tells him he went to yeshiva in Europe, a very famous big yeshiva. He says, "Wow." He says, "I have a job for you." He says, "Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here for the janitor job." And Shlomo Freifeld says, No, that's not the job I have for you. I'm looking for a new Maggid Shir. I'm looking for a rabbi to teach in the yeshiva." He says, "Rabbi, you got to be kidding me. Look how long my hair is. It probably doesn't meet the dress code for the rabbis." Shlomo Freifeld says, "There's no dress code here. Your hair is as long as my peyot. My peyot is all the way down there, and your hair is all. That's fine." He says, "Rabbi, he says, listen, Rabbi Freifeld says, I have a couple of boys here, very wild boys, and they don't listen to any other Rebbe. You would come, they would listen to you. If you give them a shir, Bav Mitziyah, They would listen. He says, Rabbi, Rosh Hashanah didn't take no for an answer. He said to him, today's Sunday? He says, Wednesday, I expect you in the yeshiva. You're giving shir in Bava Metzia. So this guy went home, right? This is a hippie, right? Long hair, big guy, disheveled and everything, goes home. True story. And he buys a Bava Metzia, and it has been a long time since he hasn't learned. And he said, I have to prepare shir. He sits down to learn. He doesn't have a yarmulke. He says, you know what? I have to get a yarmulke. He goes and he gets a yarmulke. He gets the yarmulke, and he comes to yeshiva on Wednesday. He's still got his long hair. He's wearing a yarmulke. And they give him to be a Maggid Shir. All of a sudden, this hippie is teaching 3 boys Gemara. After a week of doing this, he walks over to the Rosh Hashiva. He says, Rosh Hashiva, I feel guilty. I'm not wearing tzitzit, and I'm teaching Gemara. I can't do it. Chef Rav says, what guilty? He opens up the drawer. Here, I have a tzitzit. Put on tzitzit. He gives him tzitzit. And this man continues to be the Maggid Shir. So much so that he was Chazer b'tshuva completely. Till today, his children and grandchildren, all Shomer Torah and Mitzvot, living in Eretz Yisrael. What happened? He gave him his aroma, he gave him his smell, he gave him a job that he felt covered again. He gave it back to him. So the Rambam is telling us that how did Yaakov get Esav to change? Gave him what he wanted. Esav wanted presents, he wanted gifts, to give it to him. But that lesson is to all of us. All of our kids want something. So we give it to them. You do this, you learn Torah, you go to the class, you do that, you do this. You'll get something. You give them an incentive. Obviously, it has to be within means and it has to be within normalcy. But that's the way that we can get our children. That's the way we can influence them. That's the way we can direct them. You know how great it is to do that? The Gemara in Ta'anit tells us there was a big tzaddik by the name of Rav. You heard of Rav in the Gemara. We talk about Rav and Shmuel, right? Rav, who is called the Rav of Bavel. He never looked beyond his 4 amot. Once there was a drought. There was no rain. And they decreed a fast. And the rains didn't come. And Rav was davening. And nothing happened. No rains came. All of a sudden, someone else got up to daven. And he said, Moshe v'ruach. And the wind started to blow. He said, Morid HaGeshem. And the rain started to go. Rav was perplexed. Rav said, what special merit does this man have? That when he davens, all of a sudden Hashem is listening, everything's coming to him. And when I'm davening, nothing. So this says, Rav says to this man, what is your job? What do you do? He says, I'm a teacher of children. He says, what does that mean? What do you do to teach them? He says, I teach the rich and the poor, and I don't charge anyone. If they pay, they pay. They don't, they don't. But also, if there are boys who don't understand stuff in the class, I have an aquarium. And any boy who doesn't learn well, I bribe them with fish in my aquarium until they start to learn. He didn't rebuke them. He gave them an incentive with some goldfish. And because of this, he was zocheh that when he davened, his tefillot were answered. It's something to think about. It's something to understand that we have to know how to approach every child. You have to know what they want and how they want. That means you have to get to know them. And you have to know how to reach out to them. Just like the Rambam was able to use those herbs to get the worm out, that's our job too. To get out from our kids the bad and bring out the good. That is our job. So, moving on to our second lesson on this week's Parashat. Yaakov Avinu, he says, I'm going to split up the camp into 2. He crosses over his family at the Yabok River. And after he crosses over, he realizes that he left over a few tiny jugs. So Yaakov Avinu goes back to get them. And what happens? Obviously, we all know. Esav's angel comes to fight with him. But before Yaakov wasn't aware of angel's presence, the Pasuk tells us The pasuk tells us that what? That Yaakov was left alone. What is the Torah trying to tell us? That Yaakov was left alone. Vayivater Yaakov levado. What is the pasuk telling us? Harav Gedalia Yeshua, Zecha Tzedek L'Bracha, Yeshiva Torah V'dat, in his Sefer, the Or Gedalia, because you know what it means when the pasuk says Yaakov remained alone? He says that Yaakov Avinu his whole life, he felt Hashem next to him. He means everything in life, he always felt Hashem was there. It's a big sense of emunah to always feel Hashem is there. Right? And he felt it at all times. When he was at Lavan, when he was running away from Esav, when he was taking the brachot, everything, he always felt that Hashem was right next to him. But now the pasuk says, Vayivater Yaakov levado, Yaakov was left alone. Yaakov even crosses over to get a few jugs, and all of a sudden, he doesn't feel Hashem anymore. All his life he felt Hashem next to him, and now he doesn't feel Hashem. So what does he do? He feels abandoned, all alone. Rav Gedalia Yeshua says the angel was sent specifically to challenge his faith. Yaakov doesn't feel Hashem, and an angel is coming to fight him. Imagine how he feels now. He always feels Hashem at his side. Now Hashem leaves him. He doesn't feel him. And an angel of Esav comes to fight him. What would you do? What would a person do? God's always with me. Now he's not. And one of God's angels is coming to fight me. Yaakov Avinu strengthens his emunah. He says, no, just because I don't feel God doesn't mean Hashem is not here. Hashem is here, Hashem is going to help me. And he overcomes the angel. And what's the name he gets? He gets the name Yisrael. Where did the name Yisrael come from? Yisrael. Take the sin, move it to a shin, right? Take the dot, move it over, comes Yashar. What's Yashar mean? Straight. Yaakov Avinu says, I don't feel God, so what would I do? I'll go straight to God. Usually I feel Hashem next to me. He's not next to me. I don't feel him now. So what's the plan? Yashar. I'll go straight back to Hashem. The truth is, all of us at some point feel that, sometimes life's ups and downs, right? And when it goes down, a person can start to question. Where's Hashem? How could Hashem let all this happen? How could all this happen to me? And he feels all alone. Yaakov Avinu teaches us that even when you feel all alone and you feel that God has left you, be Yashar. Go straight back to Hashem. Don't say, he left me, okay, now I'm going to leave him. Chas v'shalom. You go right back to God. The Rambam and the Ramban have a machloket. Is emunah a mitzvah or not? The Rambam, Maimonides, says emunah is a mitzvah. The Ramban says emunah can't be a mitzvah. Emunah is the basic belief. If you don't believe in Hashem, what mitzvot are there? So the question is on the Rambam, how could you say it's a mitzvah to believe in Hashem? That's a prerequisite before you can even be Jewish. You have to believe in Hashem. So the Slonim Rebbe explains, believe in Hashem is not always easy. Especially when things go bad and things go the wrong way. When it's going good, it's easy to believe Hashem. But when it goes bad, that's the struggle. That's the litmus test. And that's the mitzvah that the Rambam is talking about. The Rambam is not talking about believing Hashem when everything's okay. When everything's okay, everything's good. When it's regular. The Rambam is talking about a mitzvah that when you feel that Hashem left you, to still believe that Hashem loves you and cares for you, and to be yashar, to be straight with Hashem, that's the challenge, and that's the goal, and that's the mitzvah according to the Rambam. There was once a childless couple that lived in Ofakim in Eretz Yisrael. Ofakim They lived a great Gaon, a great tzaddik. Tragically, he passed away when he was young. Harav Shimshon Pincus, Zecha Tzaddik L'Bracha. And this couple, without children for many years, and they went to doctors, and to rebbes, and to kvorim, and to all sorts of sigulot. You can read tons of books on how to have children, what to do, and what to say, what to eat. Right? There's tons of sigulot out there. And he did it all. And nothing worked. About 20 years. No children. Rav Pincus sees him very dejected. And he says, what's going on? He says, listen, Rabbi. He says to the rabbi, I can't have kids. It's already been so long. We gave up. And the rabbi says, listen, I have one more sigula. And this one's definitely going to work. He says, Rabbi, please don't give him a sigulot. I had enough of them already. The rabbi says, listen, I have one more sigula. We have to do it tonight. Tonight after midnight, come to my house. And we're going to make the sigula. So this young man, he doesn't want to get his wife's hopes high. He doesn't say anything to her. He says he has to go out to see the rabbi. And he leaves the house and he goes to Rav Pincus's house at midnight. And Rav Pincus is in his car waiting for him. He says, come. He takes the young man into his car. And he says, now we're going to go do the sigula. And he drives out into the Israeli desert. Just desert. And after about an hour and a half driving, he stops, pitch black outside after midnight. He stops in some random spot in the desert and tells this young man to get out of the car. And the man says, okay, Rabbi, what's the skula? What's the good luck charm? What am I doing to get children? And he says, you're going to daven to Hashem right here, right now. And Rav Pincus drives away. No, the young man's by himself. Rav Pincus drove away. It's the middle of the night. It's just him in the desert. Just him and God. So he starts davening. About 45 minutes later, Rav Pincus comes back. And the man starts to walk over. And Rav Pincus says, you daven? He said, yeah. He says, Rav Pincus looks at him and says, you didn't daven. You have to really daven. And he zooms away and he leaves him there again. So this man starts to daven more. And he's davening and he's crying and he's talking to Hashem like he never talked to Hashem before. Rav Pincus comes back about an hour later. And he says to him, you daven? And the boy man says, yes, I did. Rav Pincus says, you didn't daven. Daven to Hashem. Daven to Hashem for real. And he zooms away. He comes back an hour later. This man is sweating profusely. His eyes are teared red. And Rav Pincus asks him, did you daven? He doesn't even have a voice to answer. Rav Pincus says, Mazel Tov. And he brings him inside the car. Exactly a year later, this man had a child. Because he did the real segula. Because there's a lot of segulot out there. But the real segula is to talk to Hashem for real. Everyone's ready to eat the etrog. Everyone is ready to take the Kabbalist tears and put it somewhere. Everyone's ready to wear a kameya. Everyone's ready to do all these things. But what about being yashar with Hashem? Being straight with God? Tamim tiyem Hashem elokecha? That's already a different challenge. It means I really got to think. I really got to talk. I really got to be a close relationship with Hashem. Even when everything looks bad. That is the challenge. That's the real segula. When a person is with Hashem completely. We'll end off with one more idea on this week's Parashat. We have, towards the Perek Lamed Gimel, in Pasuk 17, it says that Yaakov was traveling back, and Yaakov came to the place called Sukkotah. Why was it called Sukkotah? Pasuk says, Vayivin lo bayit. Yaakov built a house. Umiknehu, and for his animals, asa sukkot. He made a sukkah for them. He made a hut for them. Aken kira shemo hamakom Sukkot. Torah says that's why they call the place Sukkot. So the obvious question is, why? You build a house for yourself and you build a hut for the animals and you're calling it after the hut for the animals? You should call it Jacob Town, or Jew Town, Levin Town, I don't know. Why is Yaakov calling the place Sukkot? Because he made Sukkot for the animals. Make the question stronger. The Targum Yonasan, right? The Targum Yonatan ben Uziel says, what does it mean, Vayiven lo bayit? He made him a house. You know what the Targum Yonatan says? Ubana le bet midrashah. He made a bet midrash. This is when he built a house. That means he built a bet midrash. And the Sukkot is for the animals. So, why is Yaakov calling the name of the city after the house he made for the animals, the hut he made for the animals, rather than the house for himself, or the bet midrash that he made for himself? Why is he naming it after the animals? In the northern part of Israel, there's a yeshiva there, Yeshiva Kfar Hasidim. Many students would come to this yeshiva. The mashgiach of the yeshiva, the dean of ethics, the mashgiach, was the famed rabbi, Reb Eli Lopian. That's his name you've heard in the past. In the yeshiva, they had in the basement, they had the kitchen. And they had their pasta, flour, and other dry goods. And what happened was, the mice and the rats started to break into the kitchen and started to eat the kids' lunch. And so they had a problem. What are they going to do with these rats and these mouse? What are they going to do with them? The kids don't have enough to eat, and now the food is becoming contaminated. So some of the boys thought, you know what? What are cats for? So they went to get a cat. You can find cats. You go to the alleyways and you find a stray cat. So they did that, and they went and they got a cat and they brought it to the yeshiva, and they had the cat watching the lunchroom, and watching the kitchen, and within a week or two, no more rats, no more mice, no more rodents. The cat did its job. One evening, as Reb Eli Lopian was learning in the yeshiva, he hears scratching on the doors. He goes to look, and he sees there's a cat. He says, where did this cat come from? So the boys right away say, oh, Rabbi, we had a problem, this and that, and we got a cat, and the cat worked. And Reb Eli says, any more mice? And anything? Says, no. They say everything's gone, Baruch Hashem. So Reb Eli Lopian tells to the students, tells to the Bachrim, so since there are no more mice, what has the cat been eating? And the boys were like, we didn't think about that. He says, you've been lax in your responsibility, and you're not showing akarat atov to the cat. I'll show you how to feed the cat. And this is that famous picture. If you've ever seen it, if you haven't seen it, you can Google it. Reb Eli Lopian goes to the kitchen, pours a bowl of milk, and places it down right in front of the cat. That moment that he places that bowl and the cat's eating it, someone took a picture of that moment. We have it till today. The white bearded Torah giant, Reb Eli Lopian, bending down and feeding the cat. It became one of the most proudest moments for Klal Yisrael to see that one of the greatest tzaddikim caring for everyone, even a cat. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Zecher Tzaddik Lebracha, he writes, you know why Yaakov, the town, became Sukkot? He said what Yaakov Avinu did to build shelter for his animals was unprecedented for the time. No one built shelter for their animals. It wasn't done. It wasn't something that people did at that time. Yaakov Avinu was the first to ever do that. He built shelter for his animals. Yaakov was proud of building huts for his animals. And he expressed the pride in naming the entire city, not after his house, not after his name, but rather by the great deed that he did, which is to provide shelter for animals. Teaching us the importance of caring for everyone, including animals. Rav Yisrael Belsky, Zechatek Bracha, they say about him that once he was walking home and he found an injured kitten, a small little cat who was just born injured. He took the injured cat home and he put a cast for the cat. And so his bone was broken and he put a cast for it. And then he took a baby bottle, filled it with milk, and started to feed the cat. Here is the Rosh Yeshiva, giant of a man, feeding a cat in the middle of the night, fixing him up. Being able to care for every single person and every single creature in the world. I want to end up with one last idea that's connected with this. The other answer of why he called it Sukkot versus why he called the town Sukkot versus after his house or his base medrash is that Yaakov is teaching a message here. The message is that the world is a Sukkot. A world is a temporary place. Sukkot, we talk about it in Sukkot. Sukkot is temporary. That's what the message Yaakov is teaching. Yaakov is teaching everything is temporary. A person needs to realize what's the real, what's the most important, and what's not. In this world, it's just Sukkot. You have to get ready for the real. Right? There's a story that's told, and when this will end. In Europe, after there was some conflict, they redistributed the land, what belonged to Russia, what belonged to Poland, what belonged to these different countries. And each country put a tax on something coming in and coming out. Depending on the item that you're transporting, they would tax. There was a Jew who wanted to do business. So he filled up a barrel of sand and he passed the border. The guard sees the barrel of sand. He's like, "What are you hiding in here, Jew?" And he starts to go through the sand, sifting through the sand, and he doesn't see anything in it. Pass. Doesn't have to pay. Right? There's nothing in there. Again, the next day, same thing. Every single day, for 2 or 3 weeks, this guy is carrying already 250 barrels of sand. And this guard tells him, "Listen, you got to tell me, what are you doing with these barrels of sand? What are you transporting? What are you hiding in them? I'm looking for the diamonds, and I can't find it in there. What are you doing? What are you transporting in here?" If you tell me, he says, "I won't charge you, and I won't tax you, I won't do nothing to you. I just need to know, what are you doing with these barrels of sand?" And the Jew says to him, "The truth is, I'm actually in the business of selling barrels. But if I would bring empty barrels, you would charge me for the barrels. Because I'm doing business with barrels. So I fill it up with sand, and you think something is hiding inside the sand. You look through the sand, you don't find anything in it, and you let me through." Right? And you don't think about the barrels, but I'm really transporting barrels. The moral of the lesson is that the truth is, that's what the Yetzer Hara does to us also. The Yetzer Hara knows how important every single day is for us. So what does he do? He fills it up with nonsense. Fills it up with money, fills it up with this, fills it up with WhatsApp, with Facebook, with Instagram, TikTok, what did I miss there? Whatever other things. He fills it up with all these things. And then what? We get so busy, those things, that we forget to fill up our barrel with Torah and Mitzvot. Instead, it gets filled up with all the nonsense inside. This is what Yaakov Avinu was teaching us. Yaakov Avinu was teaching us, Sukkot, everything in this world is temporary. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you know what's important. So, Batai, to wrap up the 3 lessons that we learned. Lesson number 1 was, you have to know what works for everyone. What's their incentive? How to get them to be on your side. By giving them what they want, coaching it in terms that they understand. B, right, lesson number 2, we learned that even when you feel that Hashem is not there, that's not you have to even closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the true skula for anything. And lesson C was what it means to care for everyone, as well as to recognize that this world is just a temporary stop, and to keep our focus on the most important. Torah, mitzvot, gimul hasadim, chesed, helping on each other, helping our families, and seeing only the good. And with this, I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.